Sanbonani, and welcome to Africa at a Glance, the show that keeps you up to date with all the news making headlines across the African continent for this week. From Cape to Cairo, Mombasa to Lagos, we bring you business, politics, sports and arts and culture. I'm Lesego Mokonane. First thing first, let's take a look at the story of the week. The Democratic Republic of Congo's National Regulatory Authority and Ethics Review Board has formally given the green light for possible use of an unlicensed Ebola vaccine in the wake of the recent outbreak. Now, the latest reports from the World Health Organization indicates as of the 27th of May 2017, there were a total of 2 confirmed cases, 4 probable deaths and 16 suspected cases. The vaccine, known as RVSV-Zevbov, was on trial in Guinea in 2015, involving some 11,841 people. The DRC, the government, a medical charity group, Doctors Without Borders, with support from the WHO, are working on a detailed plan to offer access to the vaccine. The WHO did not advise international vaccine deployment and cold chain shipment to the DRC at this point. It, however, advised that planning and arrangement should be in place for immediate deployment if necessary. Overcrowded hospitals, exhausted staff and disgruntled patients. Tunisia's public health sector is struggling to heal its many maladies.
Decrepit walls, faulty equipment, run-down furniture. This is a typical public hospital in Tunis. Haj Mahmoud is a cancer patient and he's been waiting for a doctor's appointment for days.
Here, poor people cannot live. There is so much to say. Nobody listens to us. I am tired.
Ever since its independence, Tunisia's governments have been known to make improving health services a priority. But since the 1990s, reports show corruption and mismanagement have set the sector back, a situation that worsened after the 2011 revolution. According to the Health Ministry, public hospitals' debts amounted to more than $200 million last year.
After the revolution, we registered projects that we are unable to put in place. We also built structures that aren't functioning for lack of human resources or equipment, or because these services were closed and forgotten about.
The poor conditions also put a strain on the medical staff, who grapple with disgruntled patients, dysfunctional equipment, and critical understaffing.
Every day we have problems. Every day. At the very minimum, it's a verbal aggression, even though we try to talk to them with respect.
In the provinces, the situation is even worse than in the capital. But because of the high costs of private clinics, most Tunisians have to make do with often inadequate conditions.
The United Nations has released a mapping report outlining 12 years of abominable crimes committed by the army or armed groups in the Central African Republic between 2003 and 2015. Let's take a look.
The UN has screened 12 years of the most abominable crimes committed by the army or armed groups in the Central African Republic between 2003 and 2015. This as the Special Criminal Court sets up shop in Bangui to judge the crimes.
The mapping report comes out of the Bangui Forum of 2 years ago, and it is also mandated by the Security Council, which demanded this report. It covers a period of 13 years, going up to the end of 2015, of a period in which this country witnessed terrible human rights abuses.
In the report, the UN also documents violations committed by international and foreign defense forces. A total of 20 incidents are detailed in the report.
There is a special criminal court that has just been set up, and the prosecutor has just arrived, and our report will undoubtedly be useful for him and the court to take forward the process of individual justice.
The document also cites serious violence against persons on account of their religion, ethnicity, or alleged affiliation to armed groups, the recruitment of thousands of children by armed groups, and attacks on humanitarian workers and blue helmets. The publication of this report coincides with SPC's recent installment in Bangui to investigate and prosecute crimes against humanity and war crimes committed in the Central African Republic since 2003. Bureau Report, ANN7.
The 82 Chibok girls rescued earlier this month are now joining those already freed in a special rehabilitation program. The girls will attend remedial students where they will have doctors and nurses available to help them heal from the trauma of 3 years in captivity.
Efforts to rehabilitate released Chibok girls resume in Nigeria. 82 newly rescued girls check into a government rehabilitation facility in the capital, Abuja. The girls, released in early May, arrived at their welcoming ceremony in buses, looking happy and relaxed. Once inside the facility, they started singing songs. UNICEF specialists welcomed the girls.
You are back alive. It is a new chapter in your life. A chapter of hope and happiness, of joy. So we join the government of Nigeria and other stakeholders to welcome you.
The girls were kidnapped from their boarding school in April 2014. Boko Haram seized 276 schoolgirls from their remote northeast Nigerian town of Chibok. The kidnapping triggered global condemnation and drew attention to the bloody Boko Haram insurgency. 57 escaped in the immediate aftermath. Of the 219 who did not manage to flee, 106 have either been released or found, leaving 113 still missing. The rescued girls are now receiving medical and psychosocial treatment at the Women Affairs Center.
These girls are kept here to undergo this program voluntarily. They have agreed to it, and their parents also have given their consent. So nobody is keeping any girl here without her consent or her parents' consent.
The girls will return back to school in September. It is not yet clear where they will be taken to school. Bureau Report, ANN7.
Estimated 700,000 people in Nigeria are beyond the reach of humanitarian aid and are living in desperate conditions. The violence in the country, which began 8 years ago, has caused 1.8 million people to flee their homes in northeastern Nigeria. The country has also seen an influx of refugees returning from Cameroon and other neighboring countries. Now, according to the United Nations, some 6.9 million people are in dire need of life-saving aid across northeast Nigeria, and there is a looming threat of famine in the area.
We are extremely concerned because we don't have access to some pockets where an estimated 700,000 people are expected, currently caught up behind the battle lines with Boko Haram. We don't have access to those areas. So we are not very clear about the vulnerability status of the population in those pockets. But what we are seeing is that when areas are liberated and when people are coming out, we are seeing very ugly phases of vulnerability, especially among women and children. We are seeing signs of starvation. The convergence of three critical processes is of serious concern to us, although also very critical in finding a solution to the crisis. One of the processes is the Boko Haram insurgency, which you are aware of, and its impact, as I have already laid out. You also have the counterinsurgency strategy of the Nigerian army, and then the counterterrorism effort by the multinational joint task forces. These three processes are resulting in serious protection concerns in northeast Nigeria.
450,000 children which are expected to be in severe acute malnourished situation will not die. If they die, they will most likely die from disease that could be easily prevented if their immune system had been much stronger. So what we will see is that people will die from diarrhea disease or malaria or anything else that they normally would be able to survive if they were in a much better nutritional condition.
More than 40 West African migrants died in the Sahara Desert this week after their truck broke down in arid northern Niger. According to the Red Cross in the Belima region, 6 survivors walked to a remote village. 44 people, mostly from Ghana and Nigeria, and including 3 babies and 2 other children, died of thirst. The number of migrants who cross the Sahara has increased in recent years as impoverished West Africans risk their lives to try to reach Europe. Thousands of migrants each week are crammed up into pickup trucks for the days-long ride from Niger into Libya, often with only enough room for a few liters of water. Now, reports suggest that it is likely that more migrants die in the desert than at sea. The World Food Programme has expressed concern over the deepening hunger and nutrition crisis in Somalia as the effects of drought intensify. Now, according to the aid group, some 3.2 million people in the country are in need of emergency food aid.
The food crisis worsens in Somalia. This as the country battles a mix of dangerous conditions such as poor rains, disease outbreak and drought. At least 3.2 million people in the country are now in need of emergency food aid.
It's a desperate situation. The World Food Program is feeding about 2.3 million people right now per day, but funds are short, and if we do not receive the funds we need, we're talking about a situation that'll be potentially much worse than the famine that took place in 2010, 11, and 12 when 260,000 people died. And literally half of those died before the famine was declared. We're looking at multiples much worse than that with the numbers that we're seeing now. So we need the money, and we need it now.
In Dalo, tens of thousands of displaced people are living in camps in efforts to help the vulnerable Somalis. The World Food Programme has implemented a voucher assistance program. Displaced people such as Abdiyo Sharif Adan, a mother of 8, can top up an e-voucher with money to buy food for her family.
I've been here for 4 months since the drought displaced us. When I first moved in, the World Food Programme gave me this card. This is the only source of income we have. We don't have jobs. We do not have any other help other than this card. And this morning, my card was topped up. I redeemed it and I've used it to buy food.
Malnutrition among mothers and children is worsening despite a large-scale assistance in the country. It estimated that 363,000 children under the age of 5 are malnourished, including 71,000 who need urgent medical care. In some areas, more than 30% of children under 5 are malnourished and double the threshold of emergency. The estimated $297 million is urgently needed from June through November this year. AN7 Bureau Report.
For Egypt's government and civil society groups tackling the growing problem of street children, some from second and even third generation homeless families, is proving difficult. However, help is on the way for the country's street children.
Barefoot and wearing shabby clothes, the 2-year-old wanders through the dirty streets of Cairo alongside her mother, who has also spent all her life without a home of her own. For Egypt's government and civil society groups tackling the growing problem of street children, some from second and even third generation homeless families, is proving difficult. Now the Ministry of Social Solidarity's Children Without Shelter program is giving first aid training to children to assist in the wake of danger.
We decided a while ago to teach first aid training to children, so that boys can teach others in the street if anything happens to them, if they break something or get burned. That way they know how to handle these cases in the streets, because they're not allowed into hospitals.
In the low-income district of Sayeda Zainab, workers from the Ministry of Social Solidarity set out to help street children, this time to give them first aid training. Members of the ministry's Children Without Shelter program wear matching green shirts bearing the slogan, "We are with you. A safe, decent life for every child."
The children here at the shelter are children with problems, whether they are second-generation street children or have been separated from their family or whose family is poor.
According to the most recent ministry figures from a 2014 survey, Egypt has about 16,000 street children, figures corroborated by the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF. About 24 million people, nearly a third of the country's 90 million population, live below the poverty line.
After the improvement of social and economical family conditions, we begin to work to reintegrate the children into the family.
Civil society organizations such as the Banati Foundation that work with street children face the same difficulties as the government in helping them. Bureau Report, ANN7.
ANN7 Africa at a glance. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned.